Welcome to Prime Life. We call it Retirement 2.0. Leave each episode with tips and new ideas to help you navigate retirement in our new age. It's your time. Make it count.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not intended as medical, investment, or financial advice. We do not sponsor or endorse any of the individuals, companies, products, or services featured on this podcast. Any statements or opinions expressed are of the individual who makes them. We hope you enjoy the episode.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Prime Life Podcast. I'm Mary Crean, and I'm here today with a very, very, very interesting gentleman. His name is Dr. Harry Agress Jr. He spent 36 years in radiology before retiring at 68 and discovering new joy, purpose, and fulfillment. He's a nationally recognized lecturer and teacher, and he now helps others embrace retirement as life's most vibrant chapter. His book, Next Year's Best Years, offers 100 plus engagement ideas and 60 plus best practice references as a resource guide for a fulfilling future. This is really the perfect guest for Prime Life, living longer, living better. So without further ado, Harry, please tell our audience a little bit about your journey.
Well, I thank you, Mary, for having me on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to this. I think when I retired, when I first retired, I was very involved. I was a physician in private practice of radiology and nuclear medicine, and it was all consuming. And many of us have that kind of career. And you could own a hot dog stand, that you've been involved with your entire life, and you've never really thought about anything else. So I was really like many people, sort of looking at this vast unknown and having no idea how I was going to go forward with it. And cutting to the chase, it ended up that it's just infinitely more exciting and better than I would have ever imagined. I've wrote a book which I think basically is based on a journal that I kept for about 10 years. Where I wrote down all my experiences. I did a lot of research. I wrote about my feelings. And I then had so much information that I just really thought I needed to share this with people. And there's just, no reason to enter this phase without getting a little bit of help. And that's really, the goal of my speaking and doing podcasts and writing the book.
Tell us a little bit more about how and why this book is different, perhaps, than other retirement books.
I think this is different in that when I started, I was looking for something that was just about the emotional and personal aspects of retirement. There were millions of books on the finance, which are very important, but that I was all set with that, pretty set. And though I'd certainly read financial things, but there was very little in terms of the emotional part, maybe a chapter in a book somewhere. And I thought it would be great, again, to share what I had learned over this time. And that's what makes it really unique. It's about not just my personal journey, but also about other people that I interviewed, things that worked, things that didn't work, and then very specific steps that I found very helpful to move on.
So you say in retirement that it can span a quarter of one's life. What are the biggest mistakes people make preparing for it? And we've heard some of those on our podcast, so I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Well, I think one of the most important things is to think about all this well before you're retired. Everything we're going to talk about is you're in much better shape if you start dealing with this. And we're going to talk a little bit about 3 worksheets to help you, actually start, focusing and being in your head and becoming more aware of the things that you really will give you joy and happiness. But you have to start this before. You don't have to start it before, but if you do, it's like you then, when it happens, you're ready to go and you've got at least a start on things. Um, I think, you know, I think it's the whole idea of that you can live 25% of your life in this phase is something that when people are working, they don't really realize. And so someone who says, oh, I'm just going to, go plop on a couch somewhere, where the sun's shining and, at that, I think it is fine to, just let go, in the beginning, but that can't last. That it does not last for very long. And I think when you're talking about possibly 20 years of your life, you want to have some sort of way of going about this so that you're really, taking it to the next level. You're not just, existing. Absolutely no need for that. I think, the whole point of everything I want to say is that, I feel that retirement is one of the most unique and exciting times of our lives. And it's a time to really experiment and to find out what kind of things you could do that you've never had time to do before.
I love that answer. And you and I talked before we started the recording. I shared with you, my husband and what he's been up to. And he is probably at an age where many of his colleagues would be retired already, but he's, teaching middle school science and he's coaching and he's working on his EDD and there's no stopping him. And I love that. And I think, that's joyful. And getting back to the joyful and what brings you happiness, because he has said to me over and over, I'm so glad I embarked in this EDD program because I have such energy from it. And so how can one start discovering what truly brings them happiness in retirement or as they start to think about retirement?
Well, I was really at a loss, and I like making lists, and so I decided to just make out 3 work lists, and we can get these to our listeners, when we're finished. And the 3 work lists where I decided to write down, what do I really love? What are the things that I really love? So, for example, my wife, my family, friends, I love teaching, I love photography, and then the list goes on, sort of specific things. Then the second list is what gives you satisfaction. And that's a little bit different because it's more conceptual and it's more trying to understand the reasons that you love the things that you love. So, for example, I'm curious. I love to learn. I love to link things. I'd love to like take different parts of my world and put them together to come up with something that's different. And that kind of, and you should, and when you do this, you want to really do this by yourself. It's no one else's business. You don't need to share it. You shouldn't be asking somebody, to help you. This is really just letting it all come forward. And then the third list is again specific and has to do, what are you interested in trying or willing to try? And as you start thinking about these things, allow yourself to be imaginative. There's nothing holding you back from just putting this down on paper. By the way, it's much more effective to write it down. About 70% more likelihood you're going to have an actionable result if you write things down rather than just think about them.
I agree.
And so one trick is go back to your childhood and think about the things that you absolutely loved, the things that made time, go, just vanish and you couldn't believe 3 hours went by. Think about what you would have done if you had not done your career, and I look at what your husband has done, and he had multiple careers before this. And then he, this is, what he did is fantastic because not only does it bring him joy, but he's actually got a major sense of purpose in this. He is passing on his own experienced brain onto the younger people in middle school. So in my book, that's awesome. And you can do that in retirement at different levels. You can do it if you want to get paid. That's one thing. If you don't want such a heavy schedule, you might be able to go in as a substitute or whatever. And I think you want to open your mind up to those sorts of things. So for me, I wanted to get more involved with my creative side.
Yeah, and I really want you to talk about that. Before you do, though, my curiosity is, do you believe it's harder for certain professionals, like you're a medical doctor, to kind of like decide, okay, what am I going to do? But also, how has that changed your perspective?
How does that change my perspective?
Yeah, how has that impacted your perspective
Okay.
on,
Well,
or shape, or how has it shaped, I should say, how has it shaped your perspective on your own career and what you're doing now, being
well,
again in that type of all consuming, profession like a doctor? Let's face it, you went to school for a long time, you had to do all kinds of, training, and
well,
that's
we
a lot.
graduated in 22nd grade. That's when our training was over. Doctors, and it's not just doctors, but anyone who has been involved deeply, deeply for so long, um, can have significant problems when it comes to retirement, and it's very hard to shift their self perception to something else. And it was difficult. And I talk in the book. I talk about two separate situations. One in which someone uses their experienced brain, as I call it, to go on to something completely different. This was an illustrator who knew a lot about anatomy and ended up being a consultant for major league pitchers because he analyzed all the anatomic aspects of the mechanisms of pitching. And then the other example is a composite of three different CEO types who could not let go of who they were, and they expected everyone to bow down to them, and you
Mhm.
know they were unable to make this transition, and it can that is sad, and it's absolutely unnecessary. But one of the big points of the book is how to go about that. And in fact, it's been written that there is actually a chance that you could be so upset by this that you go through a period of mourning.
Mm.
And anytime that you gain or you have a transition, you're going to have things that are positive and things that you're going to be sad about. And even if you can't wait to get out of your job, you basically will still start to miss some of that structure and everything else. So that's a big, big part of doing the work list, and for allowing yourself, the freedom to move on to a different part of your personality.
Mm.
And one of the things I found very helpful was I started to understand how freeing this time can be.
Mm.
And I write about the four freedoms, and I don't want to of retirement. I don't want to go into incredible detail. I'll give you one example. The first freedom is freedom from failure,
Yeah.
and basically, we're all just so competitive up until this point, and we have to succeed, and we have to do everything right. And this is a time when that just doesn't have to be the case. And the example for me is I got so much involved in my photography. This is the first thing, when I retired, I wanted to sell my photographs. And first of all, you don't get paid very much when you're a new, and you're
Being
trying
a
to sell.
creative.
I didn't need to get paid, but I was still in that mental attitude. I've got to do it right. I've got to be great. And I ended up getting into an art fair, which I loved. I was very excited. I was there 4 days. And when it was all said and done, how many prints do you think I sold?
I have no idea.
One. One print. I met at least six or 700 people. I sold one print, and it was to a
Yeah.
friend. And I was devastated. And,
Yeah.
eventually I took up the attitude that Tyler Perry has, which is that there is no such thing as failure. That
Yeah.
if you come to a door and it doesn't open or closes, and don't think of it as a horrible end thing. It's just part of a maze, and you're just like you're going to this place, and then okay, what did I learn? How can I change what I
Mhm.
did? How was it helpful in learning something new? And then just move on in the maze and just go to the next one. And at some point, you'll find something that works. This is a whole nother story, but the what ended up happening is I gave my high school back. I grew up in St. Louis, and my high school asked me to do a photo exhibit. And I did that. When it was over, it was wonderful. I ended up donating the photos to the schools, and they were put all over the school.
How
And they're
wonderful.
mainly cultures, different cultures and such. So all the students and the faculty and the staff, every once in a while they'd turn a corner and there would be like a whole nother world, for them.
Hmm.
And that was infinitely more satisfying than trying to do what I was trying to do at the art fair. And ultimately, I ended up donating to healthcare facilities. So I now have photos really all over the country.
Wow.
Very happy about that.
I love that story. It sounds wonderful. And I'm so glad you brought up that one freedom because that was heavily on my mind when people transition and they try new things, or those that don't, they think about it, is that fear of failure. It's like the athlete who shoots so many baskets. And well, they got to be that way because they spent a lot of time. So, of course, they could be, great at that. So, can you talk a little bit about how you moved through that place of trying something that maybe not being as good as you thought, but then transitioning into finding that your artwork being donated was much more fulfilling?
And we'll get that answer after a brief word from our commercial sponsors.
NASA is always working harder to be your carrier of choice. We offer insurance products that can help you meet your retirement goals, such as protecting your savings, securing lifetime income, or paying for healthcare costs. We're dedicated to providing best-in-class service and are keeping things simple, and we'll have your back. We have around 400,000 policyholders and contract holders and have been doing this for a long time, 170 years, but we remain humble enough to always try to improve. For more information, visit nfg.com. Nassau insurance products are issued by Nassau Life and Annuity Company of Hartford, Connecticut, Nassau Life Insurance Company, East Greenbush, New York, or Nassau Life Insurance Company of Kansas, Overland Park, Kansas. Subsidiaries of Nassau Financial Group. Products are not available in all areas. Policyholder counts are for all Nassau companies as of September 30th, 2022, and are subject to change.
Sure. A lot of it is trial and error. I particularly am, I'm very curious. I love learning new things. And if I end up trying to learn something and I'm either not good at it or I don't like it, that's fine. I mean, I did it and I moved on. It, you know, I'm just going to, in that regard, I just want to mention the second uh, issue is your own self-doubt, which is exactly what you're talking about, and self-criticism, and that you're free from that. That's over with, and it takes a while to accept that. But I have a friend who said, I would like to try writing, but I don't think I would be any good at it. And I went a little crazy. I said, it doesn't matter if you're any good at it. You got to give it a try. And so if you take a writing course and you're terrible and you hate it, that's one fine. You found out, but you might be good at it or okay at it, but you love it. And, a whole new world can come from that. I never expected to write a book. And that just turned out to be a wonderful thing, mainly because it led to me being able to do podcasts like this and get the word out and be encouraging to people. And the other thing you have to realize is, let's say you want to learn to play the guitar or you want to, whatever, and you're taking a class or you're taking a writing class, let's say, if you don't do well in that class, nobody cares. No one. No one in the class, you're doing this for fun. No one in the class cares. The teacher probably doesn't care that much. Your friends don't care. Your family doesn't care. The only person who should care is you. And that's what this whole time is about. It's about allowing yourself the freedom to go and try all kinds of new things. And I think exploring is a huge part. And as for me personally, I'm probably on the extreme of that. I mean, I did some acting things. I took improv where I was 3 times older than the average, student. I was an extra in Mrs. Maisel. I just did a ton of things I wanted to do, and some worked and some didn't. But it was very fun trying, and it was very freeing to get over that, what you're talking about, that initial anxiety.
Well, that's very cool. Let's be honest about that. Being an extra in Mrs. Maisel, that's just amazing. But let's talk about the improv. Actually, I had a guest on a couple episodes ago, and she's in her 40s. She's done a lot of interesting things, and she also started doing some improv. And she said she's not very good at it at this point, but she's going to keep moving through. She's likes the storytelling aspect. What? Why improv? Like, where did that come from? And I commend you because that takes a lot of courage.
I will accept that. I've always loved acting ever since high school,
Okay.
and I always thought it would be fun to try an improv class. By the way, one of the great things for those on the more senior side is when you do improv, you don't have to memorize any lines, and it's all coming right off the top of your head. And I walked into this class, and I didn't quite think about it, but average age was like 24, and these are all aspiring actors and that sort of thing. And I was definitely intimidated.
Yeah.
And however, as very quickly you get into the role of the thing, and I really enjoyed it. It's intensely creative. It's obviously super spontaneous, and and again, it's sort of freeing because your brain just can throw stuff out. Now, some people are good at it, and others are not. I was okay. I have to say one thing, that it is very difficult to do really well. So your friend, that doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, it's not something you can just go into and all of a sudden you're fantastic. But you learn a lot about communication. I did not want to continue. I was really happy that I did it, and they did treat me like an equal. After a pretty short period of time, I wasn't pursuing an acting career or stand-up career. But you learn a lot about conversations and listening. You have to listen very carefully to what somebody says so that you respond appropriately. It's called yes and, that you acknowledge what they say and then you bring the conversation to something slightly different. But it's all about sharing the conversation. And we all know people that we spend social time with who maybe in a whole evening don't ask you a single question. They're so wrapped up in their own world. And I have very little tolerance for that anymore, especially after taking the improv. They're not doing their share.
Well, I love hearing that for many reasons. My through line in my life has always been sales and marketing. And when you're selling or people are buying from you, you do have to listen and you have to get them to talk about themselves. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I have found that I've lost a lot of patience for when you meet someone and they just talk at you and don't ask a single question about you. And it's puzzling. And I've thought, I'm so glad that I've learned what I've learned. And I know even so, there are times where I have to do a little bit of a check on myself and say, have you been a good communicator? Have you been a good listener? Did you get that person to open up to you? Because probably like you, I love helping people and I love learning. I'm a lifelong learner as well. And I find people fascinating. And I find that almost no matter who I meet and speak with, I'm going to learn something from that individual. And hopefully, because I want to be a better person, but I also want to learn.
Yeah, I completely share that. I ask a million questions. I ask a question, then I listen, and then I ask a question about the question. And I am much more interested as you in learning about the other person than I am talking about myself. Talking about myself is not something that when I'm with somebody that I'm is my highest priority. However, if the whole evening goes by and they haven't asked a single thing, it sort of implies a lack of curiosity on their part.
Right.
And I find it bizarre, frankly. I actually know very few people who are like that, but for me, it's something I try to steer away from.
Did you ever think prior to maybe the last 20 years that you would ever be doing what you're doing now?
Oh, absolutely not. No, no, no. I never thought about writing a book. I did think about the photography because I loved that since I was little.
Mm.
I never imagined well, let me phrase it this way. I think one, and this is a major component of the book, is that you never know where something will lead you.
Mm,
All right. So I've given two examples in our conversation already. One was the photography. I never knew when I did that high school exhibit, which was a nice thing, but I didn't think that would be life changing. That I would end up donating over 60. They're big prints. They're like 35 by 30 by 45 up to 60 inches. All over, almost every hospital in New York, major hospital, and then
wow.
other places around the country. I never imagined. By the way, the purpose of that is to create an environment that's more welcoming, because
Mm,
hospitals can be so sterile and
mm,
sort of scary,
mm,
and it's make it more caring for the patients, their families, and the staff. So I never imagined that. And then when I decided to keep a journal of what was going on for me, um, I didn't know where that was going to lead, and I
mm,
didn't know what attitudes were going to come, flowing forward. And the idea of writing a book never entered my mind, and it's been fantastic. And it's all because I just, I let myself do some of these things, and in fact, with the photography, it was something that failed. Of course, you're not supposed to accept that word, but
right.
go the way I wanted, and then
Yeah.
led me to something much more valuable.
Yeah.
And I think, the more I talk to people, the more I hear stories, like that. That's one of the really great parts of this time.
Yeah. I love it. The people around you, your friends, your family, what have they said about all of this? I'm just curious.
I think they really appreciate the time that went
Mm,
into all of this, and the fact that I'm doing something that makes me so happy. They're happy for me. This is what I love. What we're doing right now, or giving a
mm,
speech somewhere, is what I
mm.
really love. And the book is really just a way of doing that. But everyone's been very, very supportive, to say the least. It's been very nice.
Mm.
Yeah.
No, I love hearing that. That's really wonderful. There's one thing I want you to talk a little bit more about, because I think you alluded to it earlier about the experienced brain. How can people tap into that?
So I think one way that you can tap into that is the three work list is one good way to start. The other is actually to understand the difference between intelligence and wisdom.
Mm,
So intelligence is essentially knowing a lot of facts. Wisdom is taking many different aspects of your life, and you have a network. And when you were 20, that was your intellectual network was not so amazing.
yeah, so true.
That network has expanded tremendously. And so wisdom is taking different parts of that network, as I had said before, and having them affect decisions, and helping you decide on things that would be of interest to you, that are a little bit different. Um, I'm going to give you one phenomenal example of the experienced brain. This is just so cool. This is a high school friend who was a very successful illustrator and political cartoonist. And he, as that started to fade in terms of the print world, diminishing and that sort
Hmm.
of thing,
Hmm.
he got interested in something that he had loved his whole life, which was baseball. And he was a pitcher in high school. He was very fascinated by the mechanics of pitching. Because of his understanding of anatomy and what he had learned as an illustrator, he knew it really, really well. And so he decided to look at the videos of the top pitchers of all time, and he analyzed them one frame at a time. He just slowed the thing down, and he ended up finding certain things that they had in common that made them great and different from everyone else. And he ended up watching a game down at Dean Stadium in Florida with the Kansas City Royals, and he saw that one of the pitchers was making all kinds of anatomic mistakes and mechanics of mistakes in his mechanics. And Dean Stadium is small, so you can go talk to the players afterwards. You can talk to the coaches. And he went up to the pitching coach and he said, I think, this guy you had in there has got some serious problems. And the coach looked at him like, oh, who are you? Well,
Yeah.
well, my friend pulled out a sketch pad And he started sketching to the coach what this guy was doing wrong. And they had lunch. He ended up consulting for them.
Wow.
And then his son got involved. And then when it was all said and done, they ended up coaching 20 of 30 Major League Baseball pitching teams.
Wow.
20 of the 30 Major League teams, they coached pitching. That's spectacular. And that was all based on his experienced brain. That was all. He took what he knew and he applied it to something completely different, totally different. And our audience here can do exactly the same thing, either something that's different or to a new audience. So if you're a financial person, you could teach finance voluntarily to college kids or to high school kids. I mean, there's a million things, but you have to start thinking about it. And that's where I think the worklist, can give you a start on that.
Well, that's a great story. It's phenomenal. That individual you mentioned, I mean, I give him credit for having the courage again to walk up to this pitching coach. Because like you said, he was like, who are you? What do you know?
Part of it, he certainly had some guts to do that.
Yes.
But secondly, he had nothing to lose. That's a biggie in this.
Okay.
Is that you just try some stuff and you really have nothing to lose. All the coach could have said, well, thanks, and go get a hot dog or something. I mean, it was, but that's what it does take a little bit of chutzpah to do this. You have, basically, I have that. I'm not embarrassed by, putting my foot out there and trying things, touching the water in the pond. But I would like to encourage people to do that more and more. Start off with something very small.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's really great advice. I tend to be a little bit like that myself at times, although there's still a part of me that maybe will be a little sheepish. It's like when I decided I was going to participate in, at Nassau, we had a pickleball tournament and they paired us up with people we didn't know. And I just started hitting the ball around and I wasn't very good. And we were the first group up and we lost. And of course, my claim to fame was the pair that won. The pair that we played won the whole tournament, and it was for charity and it was fun. But I have to tell you, I'm sure there were a lot of people like, what is she doing? Or like, how, but it was fun. And it's always good to try new things. I'm practicing and I'm getting better because I enjoy physical activity. And, like you said, you have to really.
I give you a lot of credit for doing that. I really do, and you did it for a cause, and it was for a charity. I think it's great. I think some of the intimidation you feel when you're in retirement, all of this goes away. I can't say this strongly enough. All the 4 freedoms are crucial because you are now free of everything before. I mean, you've got to be a responsible individual, and if you volunteer to do something, you've got to, show up. You can't just drop it. But the vast majority of the stuff that you try, the things that, by the way, you don't have to try something new. It could be going back to something you were passionate about and you never got to really finish it. And you just have nothing to lose. It's very, very different. It's a different life. It's like a whole nother life that you have that is so unrestricted compared to working. And I loved my work. But I mean, I couldn't do all this stuff. I didn't take chances as a physician, but it was very freeing to be able to all of a sudden do things very differently. And I give you a lot of credit.
Well, thank you. But I really think you hit upon something. Obviously, I want you to tell our listeners how they can get a copy of your book. So that would be great if you want to hold the copy.
Do that now? Yeah. Sure. Far be it from me not to mention the book. So here's the book. It's thin. It's a little guy. And this is the book. It's called Next Year's Best Years, Taking Your Retirement to the Next Level. It is, again, it's a resource for all the emotional and personal side. This is not a financial book. And I'm going to put this up here for a second. Here's the QR code. And if you look at that and you go to that QR code, that'll take you to my website. And the website here is nextyearsbestyears.com. And if you go there and you'll learn about me and you'll learn about the book, you can, send me an email about your thoughts about the podcast or anything else, ask any questions. If you're not quite ready to, buy the book, there's a red banner on the top of that website. And if you go to that, you just fill out a short form with your first name and email, and I will send you the 3 worksheets. I will send you a free chapter of the book and the table of contents. So you'll really have a good idea of what's going on there. And that's all free. So that's the easiest way to get it at nextyearsbestyears.com.
That sounds great. So, what's the best way if an individual wants to get in touch with you? But then we're not done yet because we do have a final question for all of our guests.
I think that, the easiest way is to go to nextyearsbestyears.com. And then there's a push the button up there that says contact Harry, and just write something in there and I'll get that email, and then I will respond.
Okay.
And I would love to hear from people. That would be great.
Thanks, Harry. Appreciate that.
I think if am I going to close? You're going to close this up with a question.
Yeah, I'm going to close this. I have a final question for you.
I know. No, I don't mean close. I mean, you're going to close it up with a question. So I just want to say all this, that what this is really all about is awareness and exploring and allowing yourself to move on to a different world that I think can be incredibly rewarding. And I think it's meant to be a balance of both joy and feeling useful. Both of these things are very important. And I think in the beginning, it should be the joy. But after a while, I think some part of this, you want to really feel that you're useful and you're contributing to society, whether that's teaching or it's volunteering or whatever. And as far as a call to action for this kind of thing, I would just suggest, 1, fill out the worksheets. And number 2, just pick one of each from that menu. Pick one little thing that you're willing to try or get back into that you haven't done for a long, long time. And then the second one is to think of some way in which you can be useful, to society. And I think that'll make those 2 things will get you on a good start and making you feel wonderful.
Yeah, I think that useful thing is very vital to the conversation, because no one wants to walk around and they don't feel useful anymore. They don't feel like they have a place any longer because they've retired or they've changed careers and they're retiring and they're not sure what they're going to do. And I love that you mentioned that. But our final question for you, Harry, is you are a very intelligent man. You've done lots of interesting things in your life. Why do you wake up every day and do what you do at this point?
That's a good question. I do it because I have allowed myself, and again, it's not necessarily easy at the beginning, but I have allowed myself to see myself in a totally different light. And I'm always a physician. I'm still doing some teaching. I'll always, that will be key. But I have definitely allowed myself to move on and to realize that, I had this phase where I was young. I had a phase where I was productive as a physician. And thank goodness, I love that. And I can use the principles of that and helping others, and that's in learning and in a whole new light and in a whole new phase. And all I would say is, think about, this again, going back to what we said at the beginning, this could last 20 years easily. And so I think about how you changed between 20 and 40, how you changed between 40 and 60. And you would let yourself do it then, and you're going to let yourself do it now. And I'm just so happy that I gave myself permission to look into the other aspects of my life that are important beyond my career.
You mentioned something very important about giving yourself permission. I think
that's something that, takes a while, to develop that, because you really see yourself as a specific person you were in your career. And all I can do is try to encourage you and say that, there is a whole nother world that can be open to you if you let yourself do it. And once you do, you'll be very, very happy. And the other thing I would say is don't wait too late, to do this if you're trying to make a decision. Because if you wait to retire in your late 70s or something, you want to have time to love this phase. You want to have time to really enjoy life this way, in a new and different way. And you don't want to wait until you have either physical or mental limitations on that. So, get out there and give it a shot.
Oh, I love that. Harry, thanks for spending time with me today. And to all of our listeners, thank you for joining us again on another episode of the Prime Life Podcast. Thanks again, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you very much, Mary. That was really terrific. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you too. Bye-bye.
Remember to subscribe to the Prime Life Podcast anywhere you find podcasts. You can find all of our episodes, contact information, and more on our website, primelifepodcast.com. Stay connected with us. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.